Have you ever asked yourself, why is my dog doing that? Because of the massive language barrier between people and their pets, we've invited someone who has cracked the code and can help us get on the same page with our fur babies. We'd like to welcome Dr. Karen London. She's a certified applied animal behaviorist and a certified professional dog trainer. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me. I love to talk about dogs.
You know what? We all love dogs. Most of us do. But you're also the author of Treat Everyone Like a Dog that's available on Amazon. Can you tell us the story behind that title, first of all?
Sure. Well, the whole idea about treating everyone like a dog, in my opinion, is that it is a really reasonable wish to come back in our next life as a dog who is treated so kindly the way the best and most positive method-based dog trainers treat their dogs. And years and years ago, I have teenagers now, but years and years ago, I was yelling at my kids because they hadn't put their shoes in the bin and we couldn't find them and they looked kind of scared and I felt terrible and sleep deprived parenting, the whole thing. And I remember thinking, I would never treat the dogs I work with like this when they don't do what they're supposed to do. I think, well, what can I do to make this better? How can I make this easier for them? Clearly this is too hard for them. And I thought, wow, I should at least do my kids the honor and loving, be loving and generous to them like I am with the dogs I work with professionally. And that's when the idea for the book was born.
You bring up such a good point because it is such a fine line between kindness and discipline. So when you have a new dog, whether it's a puppy or one that is in its senior years and you need to somehow train it, you don't want to scare them either. So how do you make that balance?
So with dogs, I don't use discipline. I teach them what I want them to do. And when I know that they wouldn't be able to succeed, like I would never take a dog out for a walk in the neighborhood if they weren't going to come when they were called, because they could be in danger from cars or they could irritate neighbors or they could dig somewhere. So I control the environment so that they can't misbehave. And then I teach them what they want to do and eventually expand their freedom. So I'm not a trainer or a behaviorist or a parent, frankly, who really uses discipline. I always think about teaching. What do I want them to do? And sure, there are mistakes, but I think when most kids and most dogs make mistakes, they understand they made a mistake. They don't really, I think, need discipline. They need instruction. So I often think they don't need a correction, they need help. And that's what I do.
Do you ascribe to the idea, though, that different breeds have different personalities and therefore they require different techniques? I'll just say from personal experience, I've got two boxers and they're stubborn. They're very sweet, but they're a little hard to train.
Well, I think that there are some differences between breeds, because there are genetic differences in dogs and some behavior is genetic, but there are more differences between individuals than there are between the breeds. So you can get border collies that aren't really quick studies. You can get retrievers that don't that you throw a ball and they're like, you threw it, go get it, I don't care. Or Portuguese water dogs that act like a cat, like, I'm not going in there, that's all damp. So there's huge differences. So I think individuals have huge differences. Some of that can be based on the breed, but not that much. And I also think that, and this is really my own philosophical perspective, I often think about when a dog is being stubborn, I often think of the benefit of that. They're letting me know they don't want to do that. So there was a dog I was walking the other day who was like, no, I'm not ready to head back home. I want to keep going this way. And she sat, and she's not being stubborn. She's communicating with me. I want to keep going. I was like, yeah, well, frankly, I am freezing. My hands are blue and we're going home. So I encourage her to come home. And she might think I'm stubborn, like, oh, that Karen London is so stubborn. She never wants to go on the second loop. So I tend to think of stubborn as dogs are communicating what they want to do. But there's no doubt some dogs are easier to train than others. But I'm not sure that it relates to breed in general.
And how do you encourage? Do you bribe them with treats?
I do use treats. I use positive reinforcement with treats. Bribery to me is like, I'm showing them, here's a treat if you do what I want. Reinforcement is you do it and you get this thing, it shows up. So it's a subtle difference. What I did with this particular dog was I just went on the side of her the direction that she wanted to go, and just started to walk, kind of scooch, without actually touching her, just to guide her. The same way border collies kind of move sheep by using their bodies in space. Yeah. And she was like, oh, okay. But then, because I knew she hadn't wanted to finish her walk, we got home, I made sure to play with her, in front of the fire where I could warm up and play some tug and do things, because I don't want her to think doing what I'm encouraging her to do is punishment, like, oh, the fun's over. So realize, well, she doesn't ever want to end her walks. I need to start to teach her that when you come home, something really fun happens. Maybe treats, maybe toys, maybe going out in the backyard and playing. But teach her, what I'm trying to do is line up what a dog wants with what I want. And so that we're not at odds with one another.
That's a great tactic. All right, this is a perfect place to take a break. When we come back, I want to address a couple of things, including litter mate syndrome. So we're going to do that in 2 minutes. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Ever wondered what's on your dog's mind? Well, you've come to the right place. We've been chatting with Dr. Karen London. She's a certified applied animal behaviorist and a dog trainer, and we've been talking about just how to use positive reinforcement to get your dog to do what you want it to do or what it should do to stay safe. But I also want to talk about kind of some psychology and pack mentality that I'll just speak from personal experience. So both of my boxers came from the same litter, and it wasn't until after we brought them home that we heard of this thing called litter mate syndrome. And oftentimes it seems like the two will communicate with each other, and when mom tells them, okay, it's time to go or it's time to come in, that they kind of ignore you. So is litter mate syndrome a real thing, and how do you break through that?
Oh, it's such a great question. And it's so great that you've had this personal experience, obviously really near and dear to your heart, because it seems often like a great idea. Oh, get 2 puppies, twice the cuteness, twice the fun, twice the love. They'll entertain each other. Generally, I mean, there's a lot of great reasons why people do it. Generally, behaviorists and trainers, I mean, across the board recommend not getting 2 puppies, much less, and especially not 2 puppies from the same litter. The term litter mate syndrome is kind of an anecdotal term. It's not like an official thing, but we all use it to basically cover the suite of problems that are likely to happen, or some of them, if you get 2 puppies from the same litter. So one of the ones that you mentioned was they're really focused on each other. They don't pay that as much attention to you. They tend to be really closely bonded. That makes it hard for them to pay attention to you. And also, we're another species. We're confusing. When a single puppy comes home, they often are like paying attention to human cues and understanding our communication, and they just have more experience with that. I kind of liken it to if, like, I speak Spanish, but my husband doesn't. And when we travel, he never really uses the Spanish because I just do it for him. It's like he doesn't have the incentive to like break in and really figure it out. They're set with each other. They don't need to worry about it. So that's one issue. The other thing is that it's hard to find time individually with them because so much time. You have to put one, in a crate or a back room or out on a walk with another family member. So they don't get so much individual time, and it's hard to connect with them. And then a lot of times those dogs, they kind of rely on each other a lot, and they might be more prone to be a little fearful and anxious as they move through life. But the worst issue with litter mate syndrome is that it's really likely that they will fight, and fight seriously, especially 2 females from the same litter. Like when dog trainers and behaviorists go to a conference, all we want to know is, does anyone have any new ideas for 2 females from the same litter fighting? And does anyone have a new way to pill a cat? Like these are the 2 sort of pressing things that are so challenging. So litter mates often are likely to fight. And one of the best things that you can do is really not have them in the same house to begin with.
Oh, so interesting. You were speaking to me directly. Well, this is a brother and a sister, and they do get into those fights, which they were doing it for a while. They seem to have gotten a little bit better. But the one thing is competition, both with affection from me and my family. When one of them's getting a lot of attention, the other one horns in on it. The other thing is you could give each one their own toy, but why is it that one has to have the other's toy?
Right. What's mine is mine. What's yours is mine.
Yes. Why is this?
Well, is one of the dogs always taking the toy from the other, or they each are circulating and wanting each other's?
Well, they're each given their own individual toy, but because one has the ball, the other one wants it, and then they sometimes fight over it, or it becomes a competition to see who can grab it and hold on to it the longest.
It's hard to know exactly what's going on with your particular dog, but there are various reasons. Some dogs, they just really have never learned how to share. They've always sort of had access to it. They can get it when they go to the other one to take it, so they've just learned that works. Sometimes it's a matter of they're just not given practice hanging out in their own space with their own thing. So that can be an issue. And then sometimes there are individuals who are kind of bullies, like you'll have houses where there's like 5 dogs and you give them like 10 bones and one dog ends up with all of them. Like there can never be too many. So there can be a lot of different reasons.
I think I can relate to the latter bit. Well, if you can, with just a couple minutes left, if you can explain to our viewers what the difference is between a certified behaviorist, versus someone who's not certified in dog behavior, and the difference between that and training?
Sure. Yeah, it's such a great question. And it's very confusing actually, because it's a completely unregulated industry. Anybody can hang up a shingle and say, I'm a behaviorist or I'm a trainer. And, there's not any rules. Like, you can't do that. You can't say you're an attorney or say you're a dentist without, certain regulations. Our field's completely unregulated that way. A certified applied animal behaviorist is someone who, through the academic society, the Animal Behavior Society, has that certification, and it indicates that they have at least 5 years of experience working in an applied animal behavior setting. They have, like I needed my PhD to get a certified applied animal behavior certification. Veterinarians who are board certified in behavior can also get it. We need to have years of coursework in behavior. So we're basically trained as scientists. We have experience and education, and we've done some kind of apprenticeship or internship with someone else in the field. My mentor was Patricia McConnell, who's a well-known behaviorist and also a trainer. The difference between behavior and trainer, I'm an odd person to ask that because I happen to be both a behaviorist and a trainer, which is not that common, but I do both skills. Behaviorists tend to focus on the why about behavior. Like, why is the dog acting like this? We're trained as scientists so we can evaluate. We don't say things like, oh, well, the dog got wet and that's why he's mad. Like, well, he's wet and he's mad. It doesn't mean one caused the other. So the scientific approach to understanding it. And trainers focus on teaching dogs to do things. So when I'm understanding that a dog is really fearful and that's why they're acting aggressively, I'm functioning as a behaviorist. When I'm working on teaching the dog, okay, every time we see a dog, I'm going to grab a toy and we're going to run the other way because that's fun. I'm training the dog to run away towards a toy at the sight of a dog. I'm acting as a trainer, but I tend to do both. So the lines are a little blurry for me personally, but trainers tend to focus on the how and behaviorists on the why. But it's never really as clean as that, of course.
Dr. Karen London, you have answered some really tough questions, and you've really clarified a lot of things. There's so much more to learn about this, but I want to thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us.
Oh, thanks for having me. Like I said, I love to talk about dogs.
Thank you. We'll hope to talk to you soon. We'll be back in 2 minutes.